Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. At 10:45 p.m. on the night of the 5th of October, the University of Tehran Seismography Center picked up tremors of an earthquake that measured 4.6 on the Richter scale. The epicenter of the earthquake was measured at about 10 kilometers underground in the Ardan County of Iran's Semnan province, which is roughly 110 kilometers away from Tehran. A few hours later, there were more tremors that have been described as aftershocks that were experienced in Israel as well. Now, let's be clear. Iran is a country that is very prone to earthquakes, as it sits atop major fault lines between tectonic plates. But this earthquake, due to its relatively shallow epicenter for earthquakes in the region, was unusual. And within minutes, it sparked some intense speculation on whether Iran had conducted an underground nuclear test. Technically speaking, underground nuclear tests do produce the same kind of tremors that are set off by an earthquake that measure about 4.5 on the Richter scale. In February 2013, an earthquake that measured 4.9 on the Richter scale in North Korea had turned out to be an underground nuclear test, as was detected and confirmed by the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization. So the obvious question is this: does Iran have underground nuclear weapons testing sites? If one were to go by the 2019 report, which is a Washington-based think tank, then Iran has been building at least about 5 secret underground nuclear testing sites that are known as Field Project. And guess where the epicenter of the earthquake on the 5th of October was? Very close to one of the suspected sites of the underground nuclear testing facility in the Semnan province. So the location of the epicenter is consistent. The timing of the earthquake is significant as well. Israel is apoplectic. For the first time since the state of Israel was brought into existence, it has been struck not once but twice by a cocktail of missiles and drones, against which Israel seems to have no clear protection. Despite Tel Aviv pretending that the Iranian missiles hit nothing significant on the 1st of October, there are reports that have now emerged both in the Israeli media, such as this one, that indicate that the Iranian missiles pierced through the multi-layered air defense protection that was aided by the Americans as well to target the Israeli air bases. And in the American media, the reports have been even more damning, stating that dozens of Iranian missiles struck the Israeli air bases. For instance, on the basis of satellite images published by Planet Labs, an independent analysis by Professor Jeffrey Lewis of the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, more than 30 craters and damaged buildings were witnessed in the Nevatim Air Base, which houses the most advanced F-35 fighter jets that have been given to the Israelis by the Americans, by virtue of which the Nevatim Air Base happens to be one of the most intensely guarded facilities anywhere in the world. Israel has been challenged by Iran in a manner that it has never been challenged before. So the Israeli response, according to many military strategists, will be to strike at Iran's crown jewel nuclear facilities. And Israel has been preparing for something like this for the last 22 years. According to this report in the New York Times, in 2022, dozens of Israeli fighter jets had rode over the Mediterranean, simulating an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. But even the most optimistic of Israeli military planners are aware that for this operation to succeed, the Israelis would need the help of the 30,000-pound American-manufactured bunker buster bombs. For almost about half a decade, Iran has been described as a state that is on the cusp of the nuclear threshold. Ever since the United States of America pulled out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2018, Iran has been systematically enriching uranium to over 60% purity. But some experts have pointed out that ever since the IAEA nuclear inspectors lost access to the Iranian nuclear sites, Tehran may have as well been trying to enrich uranium to a purity of 90%, which is what is needed for a nuclear warhead. Now, without access to the site where the earthquake was triggered in Iran's Semnan province, it's really hard to conclusively establish whether it was a natural earthquake or a nuclear test that triggered the tremors. But what is clear is that with the escalating tensions in the Middle East, Tehran may feel that it has every reason to develop nuclear weapons. In 2003, the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had issued a fatwa over the pursuit of nuclear weapons. In a statement that is in Farsi that is available on the Ayatollah's official website, he said, and I quote him here, "We are not after nuclear weapons, and this is not because they are telling us not to pursue these things. Rather, we do not want these things for the sake of ourselves and our religion, and because reason is telling us to do so. Both the Shari and the Aqli fatwas dictate that we do not pursue them. Our Aqli fatwa is that we do not need a nuclear weapon either in the present time or in the future. A nuclear weapon is a source of trouble for a country like ours." Now, geopolitics is not driven by statements of moral right or wrong. Geopolitics is driven by hard power. The tiny state of Israel is a nuclear power. But the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons is something that Israel has never officially admitted. So the obvious question is this: is Iran now being pushed into a position where it is being forced to follow in the footsteps of Israel by acquiring and keeping a nuclear weapon that it won't talk about, something in the nature of a bomb in the basement? Because if the earthquake in Iran on the 5th of October was indeed triggered by a nuclear test, then the needle of the balance of power would begin shifting in the Middle East in a manner that neither Tel Aviv nor Washington would have expected. France's overseas territories have long complained about the high cost of living. In Martinique, the French Caribbean island of 350,000 people, food prices are said to be 40% higher than in mainland France. Since early September, the island has been shaken by violent protests over high food prices. After a period of relative calm, fresh protests have erupted again on Monday. And on Thursday, the protesters stormed the runway at the island's international airport. Following the fresh riots in which one person was shot dead, 26 other officers were wounded and stores were looted, a nighttime curfew has now been imposed, which remains until at least Monday. Our next report gets you more details.
A wave of violent protests over high cost of living in the French overseas territory of Martinique has resulted in a nighttime curfew being imposed. In addition to the curfew, from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., public gatherings as well as purchase of items that could potentially be used for arson attacks were also banned. The measures come after an upsurge in violence this week, during which protesters looted shops, erected burning barricades, and clashed with the police. Smoldering ruins of cars, stores, and barricades strewn across the road narrated a tale of anarchy, mayhem, and rapidly escalating disenchantment with the system.
I would say we are fed up because from the start we have been dragged around left and right, in front and behind, and that's enough. That's basically it. In other words, since the beginning we have been told things, discussed things, but nothing good has come of it. And in the end, it's all messed up. People who were passively demonstrating without weapons or anything were gassed. And I think that's too much for Martinique. We will see things through to the end. You have to tell them that this is our home, all right.
The protests were launched in early September by the Assembly for the Protection of Afro-Caribbean Peoples and Resources. They demanded the alignment of local food prices with mainland France, where they are 40% lower. In order to quell the protests, curfews have been introduced on the island since then. And in late September, the French government sent in riot police after protesters ignored bans on public gatherings. The latest wave of violence, which erupted on Monday when police tried to dismantle a roadblock, prompted shutting down of schools on the island on Thursday and Friday. On Thursday, following the rumors that hundreds of French riot police were en route to the island, around 50 people stormed the runway at the airport in the capital, Fort-de-France, prompting closure. Inbound flights with more than 1,100 passengers were redirected to Guadeloupe, another French territory. The French authorities reclaimed the airport on Friday.
Of course, we have recovered and now have full control of the airport platform. This is fundamental. Reinforcements have been sent or will be sent, and we are also working with the judicial authorities to bring a number of individuals to justice. I am thinking in particular of a man who just got out of a 4-year prison sentence for trafficking illegal products. So we are going to restore order, but at the same time, we have to take into account the demands of the population regarding the high cost of living.
With promises to restore order and consider the demands of the population regarding the high cost of living, the French government is making the right noises. But the important question is, will the French authorities, sitting some 7,000 kilometers away, walk the talk?
For years, the Islamist group Al-Shabab has been fighting to topple Somalia's central government to establish its own rule based on its own strict interpretation of the Sharia law. On the 28th of September, at least about 6 people were killed and 10 others were wounded by bomb explosions in Somalia's capital Mogadishu and in a town in the country's Middle Shabelle region. Though it was not immediately clear as to who had carried out the attacks, Al-Shabab is notorious for frequently orchestrating bombings and gun attacks in Mogadishu and elsewhere in the Horn of Africa. Our next report gets you the details.
For more than 3 decades, the Federal Republic of Somalia has been in a state of war. On the 28th of September, in Mogadishu, barely a kilometer away from the president's office, a bomb-rigged car parked on a road near the National Theatre detonated, killing 5 people and injuring 7 others. Though the target of the attack remain unknown, the affected Geldo restaurant is popular among government staff and people from the diaspora for serving traditional Somali food. In a separate incident, a bomb planted in a livestock market in Johar city in Somalia's Middle Shabelle region killed 1 person and injured 3 other civilians. The attack came a day after Somalian Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Bari publicly accused neighboring Ethiopia at the UN General Assembly of flagrantly violating Somalia's territorial integrity.
Somalia currently faces a serious threat from Ethiopia's recent actions, which flagrantly violate our territorial integrity. Ethiopia's attempts to annex parts of Somalia under the guise of securing sea access are both unlawful and unnecessary. Somali ports have always been accessible for Ethiopia's legitimate commercial activities, reflecting our commitment to regional trade and cooperation. However, Ethiopia's aggressive maneuvers, including its controversial agreement with one of our regional administration, undermine Somali sovereignty and embolden secessionist movements threatening our national unity. These actions not only sow division at the time when Somalia is striving for peace and cohesion, but also serve as propaganda for terrorist groups like Al-Shabab, who exploit Ethiopia's provocations to recruit and radicalize vulnerable individuals. Such destabilized behavior poses a significant risk to the security and stability of the entire Horn of Africa.
Somalia has accused Ethiopia of unlawfully attempting to build a naval base and commercial port in the breakaway region of Somaliland. The militant group Al-Shabab first emerged in response to Ethiopia's invasion of Somalia in 2006. Its success can be gauged by the fact that they have been able to create and maintain a parallel government in a de facto state within Somalia's official borders. Besides providing security for civilians under its rule, they operate an independent judiciary and collect somewhere between $100 million and $150 million in taxes annually. In August 2022, Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed had declared total war against Al-Shabab. One of the key strategies the government adopted was to arm tribal militias who would fight alongside the Somali army. The tactic paid dividends in the beginning as these militias played a key role in the military campaign that drove Al-Shabab out of large swaths of territory in the Al-Shabab and Gulmadug states.
Our forces are actively engaged in high-tempo offensive operations, successfully liberating numerous areas previously held by Al-Shabab. To sustain and build upon these achievements, we are increasing our efforts in extending local governance in these liberated areas and ensuring that the gains made on the battlefield translate into lasting peace and stability.
But the empowerment of tribal militiamen, also known as Macawisli, has ended up dividing the Somali society even more. The resurgent Al-Shabab, on the other hand, has gone from strength to strength. Over the past year, they have been able to regain large swaths of territory. This latest attack is yet another reminder that the current strategy of the government is clearly not working.
Pyongyang has threatened a nuclear war against Seoul and Washington if any attempt is made to encroach on its sovereignty. The North Korean leader Kim Jong-un issued the threat at a training base of Army Special Operation Units on the 2nd of October, a day after the South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol threatened to end the North Korean regime. Now, squarely blaming Seoul for destroying regional security and peace, the North Korean leader said that Pyongyang would not hesitate to use all available offensive forces, including nuclear weapons, if its sovereignty were to be breached. Now, escalating the hostility further, a week later, the North Korean army has said that it will be completely cutting off roads and railway connections to South Korea starting from the 9th of October, and will also fortify the areas on its side of the border. Our next report gets you the details.
On the 1st of October, South Korea celebrated its 76th Armed Forces Day with a military parade through the streets of the capital, Seoul. On display were about 340 military equipment and weapon systems, including for the first time its most powerful Hyunmoo-5 ballistic missile. The exhibition of military strength served dual purpose of boosting military morale as well as demonstrating its deterrence capabilities against potential North Korean aggression. Addressing thousands of troops, the South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol issued a warning that the North Korean regime would collapse if it attempts to use nuclear weapons.
If North Korea attempts to use nuclear weapons, it will face the resolute and overwhelming response of our military and the South Korea-US alliance. That day will be the end of the North Korean regime.
A day after, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un retorted by saying the comment demonstrated which side was destroying regional security and peace. Furthermore, he warned that North Korea could use nuclear weapons in potential conflicts with South Korea and the United States. Kim Jong-un reiterated the threat on the 7th of October in a speech at a university named after him, Kim Jong-un University of National Defense. He underscored that North Korea will without hesitation use all its attack capabilities against its enemies if they attempt to use armed forces against North Korea. A couple of days later, in a bid to completely separate the two countries, the North Korean army said it would permanently shut off and block the southern border and fortify areas on its side. This drastic move, it said, was in response to war exercises in South Korea and the frequent presence of American nuclear assets in the region. A largely symbolic step, the declaration follows a string of inflammatory incidents. From missile tests to hundreds of trash balloons sent over North Korea's southern border, resulting in worsening of relations between the two countries. Last month, in an unprecedented move, Pyongyang had offered a glimpse into its nuclear program. By releasing still photographs showing Kim Jong-un visiting a uranium enrichment facility. What's concerning is that this show of strength from both sides is escalating the already heightened tensions in the Korean peninsula. Both sides would do well to exercise some caution.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.